Check 1 2, check 1 2. How do we do? Hello everybody. It's a pleasure to see you today. My name is Dustin Cormier, and this is another episode of How to Rock Astrology. Today in particular, we're going to be discussing Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. This is part of our Nakshatra Sutras series. So we are going to be digging into the character of this nakshatra based on what can be expected from its nature as described in the Nakshatra Sutras, which is the Taittiriya Brahmana. Plus, also at the very end, we're going to just have a word about the native, the Purva Bhadrapada native. So we're going to talk all about their nature and then sort of rounding out at the very end. And this is, of course, Dustin Cormier here, who is doing these videos. I've been doing them for a long time, and I'm definitely planning on finishing the nakshatras. If it kills me, we're going to finish it. We're going to get through to the end so that we have done everything fair for all of our fellow nakshatra friends. It's not that bad. I'm enjoying going through them, but it has been a long go, let me say. So, let me just get my chat up here. Of course, this is a live stream, so if anybody feels like saying hello, I will be able to say hello back to you live through our internet thing that we're doing here. Okay, I think I've got just about everything I need here. There's my friend Robbie Chowdhury. Very nice to see you, Robbie, if you're hanging out. And for everybody who's hanging out and watching live, thank you so much for being here. All right, let's get started. We're going to begin today digging into our slides. Now, in my practice, for those who might be unaware, I use 12 tropical rashis, or signs, overlaid on the 27 sidereal nakshatras. And these are two utterly different systems that they're not intrinsically fused together. It's a big part of the tropical zodiac's argument for the nakshatras. If you'd like to see more about the difference between tropical and sidereal, feel free to check out my video, The Age of Aquarius Debunked, where I discuss the themes related to that discussion. It's an important one to understand the theory of what's happening here, but this will give you the general gist of it. So I start every introduction. There's an old story, and the story, it's a very old one. It's mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's a bit of a metaphor, at least in the way we're using it here, for the 3 steps. So there's this ego demon, and he grew too big, and everyone asked Vishnu, oh, can you save us from this guy? And Vishnu says, yes, I'm going to trick him. So Vishnu shows up as a dwarf, a tiny little atom, the smallest unit of measurement possible, and says, hey there, sir, I'd like a boon. The ego demon, who's so powerful, says, what do you want? You puny thing. And Vishnu says, nothing big, I want 3 footsteps of land. I want to take 3 footsteps, and I want that to be the land that I own. The ego demon says, but you're so small, you could have anything. Vishnu says, it's okay, 3 steps will do. And he says, very well, it's granted. And Vishnu says, great. So Vishnu grows very large. First he takes up deep space of the stars, the sidereal nakshatras. Then he takes the local space of the tropical zodiac. And then with the 3rd step, he steps on the demon's head, and that is on Earth itself. So this is a metaphor that the nakshatras, the signs, and the houses are 3 different aspects of spirituality, of horoscope, astrology. And so in this series, my intention is to convey the essence of the nakshatras without Rashi or sign associations. This is the tropical Vedic way. We do not see the nakshatras being intrinsically married to the signs. I'm going to be playing with my hair all day. It's too long. The nakshatras are not intrinsically married to the zodiac signs in tropical Vedic astrology. every 24,000 years, the place where the sun is on March 21st revolves backwards around the sidereal sky. That just has to do with the fact that the Earth is spinning on its top. Some very sort of complex astronomy going on there. But so in this 24,000 year cycle, the nakshatras are spinning against the tropical zodiac. So in 12,000 years from now, where your nakshatra is going to be in the opposite place in the tropical zodiac. I have the moon in Sagittarius in tropical zodiac. My moon is in the sign of nakshatra Jyesta. In 12,000 years, the moon will have the opposite of Jyesta there. So this is how we understand things in the tropical Vedic system. Hello there, Monica. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining in today and saying hi. So now this is a little bit different from the traditional, India has gone through much history with using different ideas of zodiac astronomy and nakshatra astronomy. This is a little bit different. This is the neo-tropical Vedic way of seeing things. Now, since this is worth mentioning, since we know that the signs and the nakshatras are split, it's important for us to know what that entails, because tradition in India has thought that they were combined together, which means when you read in Indian literature, when you read about a nakshatra like Purva Bhadrapada, they assume that it's going to be squeezed in and wrapped up in the sidereal sign that it falls into. Now we want to look at the nakshatras from a pure nakshatra standpoint, without having the distortion of this cultural idea that Purva Bhadrapada somehow inherently relates with. I think it would be probably Aquarius, or the end of Capricorn, probably Aquarius. The sidereal astrologers believe this is so, and we're trying to extract it so we can see what's the pure nature of the nakshatra without that sign association. In order to do this, the most authentic and undistorted literature we have on the nakshatras comes from a book called the Taittiriya Brahmana. It's a commentary on the Krishna Yajurveda, considered to be a continuation of it. And it fixes two sides of this distortion. Number one is the incorrect zodiac associations that we just talked about. But there's also this idea of the Vimshottari Lord. It's the planet that rules the first dasha when the moon falls in that nakshatra. We're still going to mention it. It's still regarded as important to some tropical Vedic astrologers. But the understanding here is that what's given in the Taittiriya Brahmana is these Nakshatra Sutras that we're going to read. Vic Dicara is going to take us through some. Ernst Wilhelm has his translations of this book. All of the tropical Vedic people consider it a very important book because it was written before the horoscope happens. It was written at a time where there was no horoscopes, no natal horoscopes. So when we hear about the nakshatras at that time, we're not thinking about the zodiac sign, and we're not thinking about Vimshottari. Vimshottari was a natal horoscope phenomenon. Before of the idea that when I was born, I had houses, I had signs around me, and the planets and their configurations. Before all that, we just had the nakshatras and their essential nature. Nice to see you, Melody Addict. Purva Bhadrapada, we're going to find out right now, Monica, where this nakshatra falls in the zodiac. So, did Western bring zodiac sign and East always had nakshatra? Good. It's an interesting question. But I would say that there was a time when various cultures, so Lux Occultum has asked, did the West bring the zodiac sign, whereas the East and India always had the nakshatras? I would put it this way. Astrology is really beyond cultural ownership. It's the stars in the sky. So it's more of who discovers things that rather than who, you know, who it belongs to. One of the reasons I say that is because when the zodiac signs were sort of pulled together, really it happened after Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great kind of stopped his reign about 300, 500 BC, 500, 300 BC. And then all the cultures of the Mesopotamian Fertile Crescent came together. India, Egypt, Greece, Persia, all these places came together and started sharing their knowledge because they had peace, because they weren't dealing with Alexander the Great anymore. And so just like after World War II, we had this period of deep peace for a long time. Now the world's kind of falling apart. Same thing after Alexander the Great. It was a period of deep peace where all these cultures came together, and that's when the zodiac came about. But whether the nakshatras were known in other places, it's interesting to think about. There are stone tablets and clay tablets from all sorts of cultures, but India most certainly had nakshatras written in the Krishna Yajurveda 2,000 years before the zodiac emerged. The zodiac has everybody's fingerprints on it, but the nakshatras might be a strictly Indian thing. I'm not really at liberty to say for sure, but I think that that's where that's going. I'd be curious to know if there's anybody else who bears claim to the nakshatras. But I digress. That's a great question, Lux Occultum. Now let's answer Monica here and see, where does Purva Bhadrapada fall in today's time? Here we have the two guys who sort of give the general idea and gist of where these things are, where they're falling. Now these are two, if you understand Ernst and Vic's thing, Vic Dicara, I'm sure you guys probably can't see. I've got to make sure. Yeah, I guess maybe I'll put this up here for now. So you guys can see Ernst. This is Ernst's Dhruva Galactic Center, middle of Mula Ayanamsha, with Dhruva equatorial longitude. Ernst Wilhelm defines the nakshatras in a different way than Vic Dicara does. Vic Dicara basically uses the Lahiri Ayanamsha, but he applies the tropical zodiac to it. So in Vic's system, the nakshatras are all 13 degrees, 20 minutes of arc. They're all the same equal size, and they begin at, you know, whatever point, right? In Vic's system, Purva Bhadrapada falls between 14 degrees of Pisces and 28 degrees of Pisces, right? So between, and that's tropical zodiac. So in the tropical zodiac, in Vic's system, it falls between 14 and 27.5 degrees of Pisces. Now for Ernst Wilhelm, he has a slightly different system. For Ernst Wilhelm, Purva Bhadrapada begins at 7 degrees of Pisces, and it ends at 21.5 degrees of Pisces. So that's Purva Bhadrapada in Ernst's system. The best thing I recommend is just to have someone who has Kala software, because, you know, the way Ernst does his calculations is a little bit more, there's more astronomy, it's more complex. They're not exactly the same size. So this is something to think about when you are dealing with these, you know, ultimately in today's time, as we always kind of have to say, it's hard to know where exactly these nakshatras fall in the modern times. You know, the world is the paint is very wet for the world of astrology, in the tropical Vedic world of astrology. And so keep in mind that if you fall in Vic's system as one nakshatra, but then in Ernst's in another, sadly, that's just, you're going to have to feel out for yourself through the data, through watching videos like this, what one feels more correct, because ultimately the two primary leaders of this idea of the nakshatras don't agree. Story of my life. So Shawanetta, I would say that usually, since these are sidereal phenomenon, you should have the same nakshatra regardless of whether you use the sidereal zodiac or the tropical zodiac, because the zodiac is something separate from the nakshatras. So wherever your moon is in the sidereal system should be what your moon is in a set way. So it doesn't make too much sense to me that you'd be Purva Bhadrapada and then Revati moon in the tropical, unless you mean that you're following Kritika at Aries. There's lots of these systems, but they should be the same. So let me know if that's confusing at all. Now, moving on here, folks, let's start digging into the classical characteristics of Purva Bhadrapada. These qualities are not given directly in the Taittiriya Brahmana. They may have been culled by cultural intuitions and commentaries based on the two distortion points we've already mentioned. So some of these character qualities, you know, I've asked Ernst about it, and Ernst Wilhelm says that these character qualities are actually good. They're given from the classical books, and they are useful for us to understand the nature of the nakshatras. We have something called the activity, which is either active, passive, or balanced. We have these 7 qualities of nakshatras given to the nakshatras. Each nakshatra is going to be one of these qualities. There's a sexual yoni animal used in traditional Indian marriage assessment, and then there's the kingdom, whether that's animal, plant, or mineral. And all of these add different flavors and characters to each of our nakshatras. Purva Bhadrapada is considered one of the fierce, severe, the Ugra nakshatras. And as such, they can tend to be tough. There's a toughness to Purva Bhadrapada. And to make matters even more so, Purva Bhadrapada is considered to be a Dhaatu, a mineral nakshatra, which can have a movable quality to it, a irascible quality to it, a toughness to it. So this is the nature of Purva Bhadrapada. It is a passive nakshatra. It's fierce and severe, Ugra. Its sexual animal is the male lion, and it is a Dhaatu nakshatra, the mineral kingdom. And fierce, so Ugra and Dhaatu really are the main things that we see happening with Purva Bhadrapada. And there's lots to be said of really all of these. Sidereal, so Shwaneta, just so you understand, the zodiac signs are 2 weeks behind the tropical calendar, but the sidereal signs don't change. The sidereal signs stay the same. So if you are 17 degrees Pisces moon, I would put you as in Ernst's system, and also in Vic's system, you are Purva Bhadrapada. So, Shwaneta, my friend, I would put you as Purva Bhadrapada moon for sure, and not at all the Revati moon, in my opinion. Hello there, Enchanted Sea. Nice to see you. So, let's say a quick word here. Again, we have an Ugra nakshatra, Purva Bhadrapada, and it is a mineral nakshatra. So, awesome, Enchanted. The moon and Jupiter like to be together, and Pisces is a great place for them to be. So, an Ugra nakshatra is essentially going to have, there's a toughness that comes from the Ugra nakshatras. Hi, nice to see you, Enchanted. Nice to be talking with you live as well. The Ugra nakshatras, the people who have the moon inside of these nakshatras, tend to be tough. These are folks who have got a little bit of metal to them. They are kind of beyond appearances. They're willing to get their fingers dirty and push. They're not quite sharp in the same way that Jesta and other nakshatras are. The Ugra quality, well, it's worth mentioning. I've been reading my buddy Corey Dowds' book on the nakshatras. He's got a great nakshatra manual. I should have been mentioning it. Well, I only just recently got it. And it is a wonderful text for digesting the natures of these nakshatras and these character qualities that we're hearing about. So let's see. Moving unsteady. So there's 7 character qualities of the planets, of the nakshatras, and they're each ruled by a planet. Now I want to make sure. I'm trying to find Ugra. So we have Ugra nakshatras are ruled by Mars, or there's a vibration related to Mars as its karaka. So 3 Purva stars plus Bharani and Magha are cruel and violent. They're the most bold, fierce, and just plain cruel. They're good for things that require this type of action, but bad for things that require gentleness and sensitivity. So they're not auspicious for things in life that we want to go smoothly, which can be tough with the moon here. The moon is a planet that wants to be kind of easygoing, and the moon needs to be loved for the nature that it has. So this is a person, Purva Bhadrapada. We tend to find ourselves loving them because they are willing to be tough, bold, assertive, and put pressure on things when they need to. I'm glad you enjoyed that, Shwanetta. Awesome. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the show here. I was late today, but we're still rolling. So these Ugra nakshatras, it's Bharani, Magha, Purva Phalguni, Purva Shada, Purva Bhadrapada. It's interesting, all the Purva nakshatras have this toughness. And the Ugra, it can be ugly. It doesn't mind being ugly in order to get done what it needs to do. It's great for winning battles, destroying, transforming, tearing down a building or structure, defeating enemies, demolishing property. They resonate with Mars and Mars-like activities. So this is the nature of an Ugra nakshatra. And it's a quality that can be loved inside of a person if it is understood and seen in the intrinsic goodness that everything can have if you seek it. Now, Purva Bhadrapada is of the Ugra nakshatras. It shares with Magha being Ugra, but also a mineral, a Dhaatu nakshatra. So in this Vedic system, we have the Dhaatu nakshatras, which is mineral. And as Corey Dowds has so wonderfully conveyed to us in his nakshatra manual, he gives a good word about how the Dhaatu mineral nakshatras are interested in things. Mula plant nakshatras are interested in persons, people. Sorry, I fucked it up. We have things, places, and people. Dhaatu, Mula, and Jiva. So Mula, the plant people, are interested in places and environments. And then Jiva are interested in people. It's the highest on the evolutionary spectrum in this sense of human intelligence. But Jiva is the lowest on the nature spectrum. There's nature, and then there's humanity with all its crazy gizmos and gadgets and whiz-bangers. Dhaatu, mineral, are interested in things. They're mechanics. They're interested in how the science of things works. They can get interested in biology, molecular things. They really get into the microscope of things. That's the Dhaatu nakshatras. And they tend to deal more with things on the ground. You know, when you think about it, a metaphor I often bring is that the Dhaatu people, the mineral nakshatra people, if you imagine them being a mechanic, you know, they know where all the scrap yards are around in order to find material that they need. They can get it internationally or they can get it from locally, but they're usually interested in the locales. They know where all the scrap yards are. And they don't care so much about the people. They mostly care about, you have this old 1985 Chevy thing, and I know it's going to break down someday, and, you know, if you ever want to, you know, if somebody comes to me with a need for it, you know, I'd love to get that thing of yours. But that's mainly it. They're not interested in connecting with people or these other environments. They're mostly interested in the things that are in that neighboring junkyard. It's the Mula people that will make deals and make a flourishing environment together. It's the Jiva people who are looking at global trends. Dhaatu people are more grounded on Earth and looking for items needed for whatever it is that they're building. So Purva Bhadrapada people tend to do this in their lives. They're a Dhaatu people. It's ironic that they get a little wrapped up in the material world because they are this person who's actually looking to burn through things to get at the essence, the spiritual essence of it. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go along. For now, it's good enough to know that this nakshatra has an ugra quality, which relates with Mars and being able to penetrate and do the tough work. And it has a Dhaatu, mineral nakshatra kingdom emphasis, which is interested in things. When it comes to people, places, and things, Purva Bhadrapada is interested in things, in concepts, yes, concepts are considered Dhaatu. Concepts, ideas, and materials, structures, systems, things. Right. Good. Now, let's keep moving forward here. I'm going to have to probably go to the bathroom at some point, but so far I'm good. All right, folks, let's move on. Now, we are starting to dig into the Taittiriya Brahmana's Nakshatra Sutras. For those interested, keep in mind, you know, especially for you guys who are Uttara or Purva Bhadrapada, you might find a mantra is a thing that you're interested in. This is a very spiritual dimension of the zodiac that we're dealing with here now. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Purva Bhadrapada people are attracted to using the sutra to understand it more deeply. Because this is what was done back in the old days. You know, we'll say a point here. There was a time when there was no writing, and so this information was conveyed in a very psychedelic way. They had what was called the Soma Yagna ceremony. Sometimes it would take a year to do this whole thing, but sometimes it would take, depending on the needs of the ceremony. They would have this 27 brick sacrificial pit, and they did all these oblations and mantras. And not only the mantras, but each brick, they did these certain ceremonial sacrifice, little rice patty things that they would use. And in the very old days, it would be a soma ceremony where they drank this potion, which some people would say might have had some psychedelic properties to it, or at least very profound herbal nature essence properties to it. And the whole ceremony would make up the living text and scripture of the nakshatras. And so as time went on, they started to feel out the nature of these nakshatras by making texts like the one we're about to go through. Now, in these days, these people only had so much time to go through so many mantras. They didn't want to have to memorize a commentary, this person's idea of Purva Bhadrapada moon. So in order to contain all the data into something concise, something that was transferable, what they did is they made these enigmatic koan-like sutras. And the sutra itself, when you digest the rhythm of the sutra, the flow of the sutra, it's like the tip of an iceberg. And when you digest and contemplate the sutra, the meaning contained in the sutra contains the essence of all things that you would really need to know about this nakshatra, about Purva Bhadrapada. So memorizing and moving through this nakshatra can be very useful, depending on if it's a strong placement of yours in your chart. Especially, I find it's useful to know your nakshatra sutra if you have Rahu or Ketu in your nakshatra. So keep that in mind. Now, this is the structure of the nakshatra sutra. It has a certain structure, a certain flow. It's almost like there's a melody. And in order to memorize something, it's like a limerick. What's like a limerick? Da 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 da. There once was a man named Tommy. He came from a place that was balmy. See if I can make one. His pants wouldn't stay up, and so when things got tough, he went and called his mommy. Yeah, nailed that. So that's like da 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 da. It's like a way to memorize. You know what's coming. It's Dadaism. You know that there's a rhythm coming. And the same way with the Nakshatra Sutras, there's a placement where each of the words has a universal meaning. The meaning of the placement is just as important as the word that falls into that placement. And that's what we're looking at here. So we have the pink word is the deity, which rules this nakshatra. The white word, and these, by the way, the colorful sort of thing that we have here is given from Vic Dicara. This big Purva Bhadrapada word. It comes from Vic Dicara's course, and you'll be seeing that as it comes along. The pink word is the deity that rules the nakshatra. The white word is the name of the nakshatra, and sometimes some obscure names are given for more information. There is an example here. We have Purva Prastapadaha, and so that Prastapadaha is going to have a certain meaning, a certain relevance. Instead of saying Purva Bhadrapada, it says something else. Again, because there was only so much space and time, they wanted to convey as much enigmatic information as possible into these sutras. So we have the yellow word, which is the padastat. It's the foundation above. It's what's needed for this nakshatra to function at its best. And then the blue word is the foundation below. And this is what the nakshatra desires to produce from what it receives. That's the avastat. So you'll hear how this sutra goes is that the deity who rules this nakshatra needs this in order to produce this. Right? I'll say that again because it's a very simple condensation of how these nakshatra sutras work. The deity who rules this nakshatra needs the foundation above in order to produce the foundation below. Right? I think we just get stuck in bad situations. Too lazy to leave them. Interesting, Gunmetal Crow. Cool. Okay, so let's keep moving forward here. We are now looking at the Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra Sutra itself. And this is the one, sadly, I don't mean for better or worse, some people would say, oh, I'm lucky, I get more joy to fill in my mouth. The Purva Bhadrapada probably has the longest Nakshatra Sutra. And so there is a lot here. Now, I am going to do my best with it, to flow through it with us here. And if you find that my pronunciation sucks, as it very well might, I recommend you to check out Vic Dicara has a wonderful YouTube channel where he goes through all of the Nakshatra Sutras. You just look up Purva Bhadrapada Vic Dicara. You'll find somewhere he's got 2 series of nakshatra videos. In one of them, he will go through this Nakshatra Sutra so you can hear it for yourself. Excuse me. But for now, let's do the best that we can. There's certain rules in Vedic pronunciation. One of them is that when you have a dot at the end of an H, it's going to have a H sound. Whenever you have a line over top of a vowel, you imagine that there's two of that letter. So this is like purve. When you have a dot at the bottom of an S, it comes off as more of a sh, but it's more of like a softer sh. Prashtapada. It's more like prashtapada because the A has got the ah. I'm going to do my best to keep that in, but it is tough once you get into these things. Vaishva, the same thing with the S, a little asterisk on top. It's got more of an ash sound. Vaishvanaram parastad. Vaishvavasham avastat. Vaishvavasam. Oh, that's tough. Vaishvavasavam. Vaishvavasavam. Avastat. So all together, I'm going to say it, I'm going to practice it here, and then we'll do it together. Ajasyaikapadaha. Oh yeah. Ajasyaikapadaha purve prastapadaha. Yeah, so it would be all one thing. Ajaisyakabadaha purve prastapadaha. Vaishvanaram parastad. Vaishvavasavam avastat. Ajasyaikapadaha purve prastapadaha. Vaishvanaram parastad. Vaishvavasavam avastat. He's usually got the bit of a wave here, but in this one, it's particularly a crazy long one. So try to see if you can manifest your own rhythm that you feel comfortable with. Again, Vic Dicara would give you the ideal rhythm to flow with. Ajasyaikapadaha. It would be more like Ajasyaikapadaha purve prastapadaha. Vaishvanaram parastad. Vaishvavasavam avastat. Ajasyaikapadaha purve prastapadaha. Vaishvanaram parastad. Vaishvavasavam avastat. I think that's the best we're going to get there, folks. Hopefully that turned out okay. That one was a tough one for sure. Is the nakshatra you mentioned in your Aditya reading? I'll have to check that too, Monica. I'm glad you asked. I tolerated all 3 ads to help boost algorithm. Oh, bless you, Teresa. Oh, awesome. I'm glad to see you, Teresa, and I'm glad to see you, Monica, as well. Oh no, what has happened? Here we go. Alright, so let's start digging into the meaning of this Nakshatra Sutra. Obviously, this is one with a lot squashed into it. But it has a very distinct and succinct meaning at the end of it all. Now, we are going to hear the meaning of this nakshatra from 2 different spaces and places. The first one is going to be Ernst Wilhelm. Ernst Wilhelm has given a tiny little text that you can get for free on his website. It's astrology-videos.com, I believe. I believe that he's still putting out this nakshatra thing. And it's his translations of these enigmatic nakshatra sutras. Then we are also going to dig into Vic Dicara's through his book Nakshatra, The Authentic Heart of Vedic Astrology. Goes a little deeper with Vic Dicara, but I like to do them both. Ernst Wilhelm's sutras are nice because he doesn't try to make it lean into a specific meaning. You see, Vic Dicara has done his own digging, and it's good work on what he thinks the overall meaning of this Nakshatra Sutra is conveying. And he narrows it down to a specific meaning. Now, what I like to do Ernst's Ernst Wilhelm's translation first because Ernst keeps it enigmatic. Ernst just says this Sanskrit word means this. This Sanskrit word means this. This Sanskrit word means this. He doesn't try to bring it into one cohesive meaning. So what we do is we listen to Ernst Wilhelm first. We get an overarching picture of this enigmatic phrase, this enigmatic sutra being conveyed in the meaning of it. And then we read Vic Dicara later to narrow it down. Oh yeah, cool. So Rahu in Purva Bhadrapada, you're going to be certainly hearing about it as we go along, Margalita. Probably in about an hour or so we'll be going through the Rahu and Ketu of Purva Bhadrapada. Now let's stick around here. Let's see what Ernst Wilhelm has to say in his enigmatic way about this sutra. What he says is, the ekapadaha purve prastapadaha, 1 foot at the earlier feet of the stool of the Aja deity. So this is this 1 foot at the earlier feet of the stool. So really Bhadrapada is a sort of like a stool. And it's a particular stool with a particular meaning that we're going to digest into. And the ekapadaha is the 1-footed at the purve. Purve relates to our word previous. So, it's worth mentioning many of these nakshatras, there's actually 3 or 4 depending on how you define them. Some people say Vishaka and Anuradha are a pair, but they don't have the words Purva and Uttara. But there's 3 given pairs. There's Purva Falguni and Uttara Falguni. There's Purva Ashada and Uttara Ashada. And then there's Purva Bhadrapada and Uttara Bhadrapada. So all of them tend to be like a bed or a cot or some kind of footstool. And for the Bhadrapadas, you have Purva Bhadrapada, which is the earlier part of the stool. And then, this grouping of stars is this giant bed in the sky. So one half, the earlier half, is Purva Bhadrapada. The later half is Uttara Bhadrapada. And so this is what we're getting the sense of, is there's the 1 foot, and that's Aja Ekapad, the 1-footed one at the earlier feet of the stool. So let's dig into a little bit of what this 1-footed one means, the singularity, the standing in one place. There's a nod to truth happening here, where you don't have 2 feet standing in 2 different perspectives. And that's why there's this two-faced figure. There's a deep reflection in Purva Bhadrapada where it sort of burns things down to their singular essence beyond duality. That's what these people are doing. That is their lives. They tend to be tough bringers, tough people who bring things together to their essence. So Ajasya, interestingly, means of the unborn. And this is this Ajasyaikapadaha. Ajasya is of the unborn, of the goat. And then Ekapadaha means 1 foot, or one in the same place. Together, that's Ajasyaikapadaha. The unborn, 1-footed in one place. Now, Purve is the earlier part. Prastapadaha is the feet of a stool. So that's what we know of the deity and the nakshatra. Now, what is the essential function going on with this nakshatra? That's what we're next going to talk about. This is the second line. Vaishvanaram parastad, Vaishvashavam avastat. So Vaishvanaram means relating or common to all humans. There's something that is common to all humans, and whatever that is, there's a universality, this oneness, is what the essence of things, is what Purva Bhadrapada wants. And once it taps into that, then they can create what their energy is intending to radiate, which is Vaivavashavam. It's the collective Vasus, or gods. So once you find that which is universal to all humans, you will find the wellspring of the gods. So, and this is the energy of Purva Bhadrapada. 1 foot at the earlier feet of the stool of Aja is common to all humans from above and is the collective gods from below. Right? So that's really, this is a very interesting enigmatic statement, and this is an enigmatic sutra. This nakshatra is known for this. We see written in this Nakshatra Sutra that this is something, it's a, as far as melon scratching, as far as melon scratchers go, this one's a honey doodle, as Ned Flanders would say. There is this universality in humanity, and really this nakshatra winks at the divinity of humanity, because what is important to all humans is in itself a reflection of what the gods mean, of what the deeper stellar forces of the soul intend to convey. So both the Bhadrapadas are interested in finding this out, and how it has to be done is through consecration. This consecration is a key theme for both Bhadrapadas. It's a very holy, there's an essence, there's a psychedelic holiness, there's a spirituality, there's a metaphysic to the Bhadrapadas. Purva Bhadrapada gets to the essence of things through fire, through consecration, through that hard ugra, it tends to be a watchdog, tends to get itself involved in, like Purva Bhadrapada can be interested in like the Illuminati, like the elites, like, the deep people running the world, the Jeffrey Epsteins and, these people. And Purva Bhadrapada, I think Jeffrey Epstein is actually a Purva Bhadrapada moon. These people get themselves involved in that world, and sometimes they can get so wrangled up in it that they can become involved in it, as is Jeffrey Epstein's case. But that is an example of a guy who got into that power, the deep running power networks of things, and he obviously has the ill karma of somebody who would take that in a malevolent way. But most times Purva Bhadrapada, they're interested in getting they have a nose for deep running systemic things that are ruining the universal virtue of humanity, basically. And they want to stop it. They want to burn it. They want to live their lives sacrificing and devoting themselves to purifying it, to cleaning it, piling it on the altar, as we're going to read. Uttara Bhadrapada is more about sprinkling things with water. And so it's an inner devotion that gets to the essence of the universe through Uttara Bhadrapada. Purva Bhadrapada does it the hard way, by rolling up their sleeves and smashing their head into whatever they've got to smash their head into in order to purify, to cleanse, to be the lightning bolt that makes the air clear. And so that is, Purva Bhadrapada is technically the tougher karma. But there's a reward that can come to these people if they follow their nature, just as the same for every nakshatra. So that was Ernst Wilhelm's depiction of Purva Bhadrapada. Now let's dig into Vic Dicara. This all comes from the disclosed lessons on Nakshatras, Sutras, from Vic Dicara's website, www.vicdicara.com. He has given me his permission to use whatever information I want in teaching astrology, because God bless him, that is his ultimate intent. But, this is me really warming you guys up to the deeper work that can be done with the nakshatras, with guys like Vic Dicara and Ernst Wilhelm, who have studied the Sanskrit and really dug into it. I'm, somebody who's pre-digesting the material with you here. So let's take a look at some of our definitions. Ajasya Ekapadaha, Vic Dicara tells us this is the serpent of divinity. And interesting that he's a fourth of divinity. Perhaps this relates to, Dharma having 4 legs, and this is 1/4 of it, and it's standing on 1 foot. The serpent, of course, is a 1-footed being. That's part of the implied symbolism and imagery. There's a serpentine nature, there's a Rudra nature to Purva Bhadrapada, as well as its partner, Uttara Bhadrapada. Now, we have the word Prastapadaha, and that is the descending protruded place. And that's very interesting to think about. Prastapadaha, the descending protruded place. It's interesting that this divine serpent would be coming down to this, protruding and descending, looking down towards the material of a particular space, particular spot on planet Earth. Vaishvanaram, that's an all-devouring fire or an all-pervading light. And this is how Vic Dicara describes what Ernst Wilhelm calls the relating or common to all humans. Vic Dicara is adding in the essence of the fire, of an all-pervading light, as we're going to read in Vic's deeper deconstruction of this word. And then we have Vaishvavasavam. Vasavam, yeah. And that is of muting the invigoration of the world. So there is an invigoration in the world. Again, Ernst calls this the collective Vasus or gods. What this means is that there's a deep Kundalini reference in here, and I just want to point this out. Kundalini, Kriya Yoga, we are using our consciousness to temper the flow of energy between material and root. And ideally, once you've gotten a hold of this, at least in the Kriya Yoga tradition, this is an idea, so maybe I should preface this, that this is my rendition of something being said here through my understanding of the Kriya Yoga tradition, is in the Kriya Yoga tradition, we're looking to temper our indriyas to make it so that the energy, generally speaking, is rising up the current of the spine, also flowing down in a flow. But the idea is to make it so that there is not an unconscious compulsion for the senses and the indriyas and the powers of the soul to be drained and flooded through the root in an unconscious way. We're trying to make it so that we're not spilling the seed by letting things flow out through the bottom, again, in an unconscious way. It's not that flowing out through the bottom is bad. Earth is just as important as the high. But the idea here is the soul and the powers of the indriyas. We want to cycle them in a tantric way, and then so we can use our divine forces and guide them towards the proper intentions that we're made for. That's a deeper sacrifice for us. And so the indriyas flowing back up through the spine is part of what is being conveyed by this, the muting the invigoration of the world. The invigoration of the world is our senses pouring outward. Vaishvavasavam basically means that, when you think about it, the world is perfect. The universe is already exactly what it's supposed to be, but our attachment to things being a certain way is what stops it from being perfect. And that's the invigoration of the world. What we're trying to do is invigorate the soul so that we can treat reality and enjoy reality for what it truly is, not for our messed up expectations. And so this is a real karmic signature. It's a purification of the karma that is coming from a very divine nakshatra. It's tough for a lot of people. And having the moon here, especially in this Ugra Dhaatu Nakshatra, can be tough. It can be tough to be a person with this signature. Now, what we see is this nakshatra is good for deconstructing, destroying, undoing, contradicting, and finding a oneness beyond differences. Where this nakshatra is negative is that this person can be destructive. They can be difficult to be with. They're looking for problems. They can be overly critical and they're not the best at just finding simple peace and satisfaction. That's not where their bread is buttered. These people are looking for a problem. And they'll find a problem. But that's just part of the divine energy of a nakshatra like this, is that there's a beauty to that as long as the acid doesn't melt the container that holds it. I want to make sure you guys can see this cool thing here. Yeah, it looks like you should be able to, but my picture is blocking everything in the universe. Let's see if that works better. So this is our final read here. Again, these both come from Vic Dicara, and we're going to go deeper into this second one. But this blue bar is from his first Nakshatra Sutra lessons that he did. It says, the divine serpent of manifest reality at the front of the altar's base needs the universal divine fire to dissuade all of material existence. And this is basically the same thing that's said, and he refines it more in the second statement. The divine serpent coming to the altar's base needs the universal fire to dissuade material existence. And that's, again, this sort of psychedelic, you know, Kriya Yoga wink that's happening with this nakshatra, is dissuading material existence, dissuading its energy so that it can be seen in the perfection that it is without the unnecessary attachment in the soul to the material objects and to the pain and the joy of the material objects. It's really pretty interesting and pretty psychedelic. And what's important here is that Vic Dicara now describes this stool as an altar. And it's this thing being an altar that really brings on these connotations of even more of a sacrificial, karmic, divine energy, a spirituality, a true spirituality is being conveyed in this nakshatra. I'm glad that my hair is doing the trick today. It's super long right now, so I'm dealing with what I can with what I got at this moment. Thank you, Shwanetta. So, we are at an hour. Let's do a quick bathroom. And then when we come back, I'm going to have one of these pieces of chocolate. Because I can. Because I love it. Oh, wait, I got to get this. Hold on, check this out. Oh, you see that? I'm the fucking best. Anyway, folks, let's do a bathroom break. And when we come back, we're starting to get into the official deep dive into Purva Bhadrapada. I'll see you guys in just a moment. Bonjour. talking about Epstein there, Gunmetal Crow? I have these tiny little bugs. So I did recently do a thing on Epstein for his big three, but now I don't remember what exactly he had in there. But I digress. Let's continue forward with our current thing that we're doing. This is now, folks, we're beginning to get into Nakshatra, the authentic heart of Vedic astrology, by our boy, none other than Vic Dicara. In his series, in his lectures, and on his website, he is full of a wisdom that is steeped in tradition and his own love of reading Sanskrit texts. So I highly recommend Vic Dicara for all things. For all things. Dude's a beauty. And now we're digging into Purva Bhadrapada, before the sacrificial altar. And again, we have, of course, our enigmatic Nakshatra Sutra. Om Ajasya Padaha Purve Prastapahadaha Vaishvanaram Parastad Vaishvavasavam Avastat. The divine serpent coming to the altar's base needs the universal fire to dissuade material existence. There's a tapas, there's a Shiva, there's a Rudra connection to the whole idea of spirituality. What is it that keeps bringing you to the mat? What is it that keeps you doing your yoga? What is it that keeps you purifying yourself? Sometimes we want it to be easy. Sometimes it is not easy. There is no ease to be had. What's going on here? I'm trying to bring my... Okay, I gotta try this again. Sometimes spirituality is tough. Showing up, being there, being present, to consistently do what you have to do for yourself, and to do what you have to do to advance yourself in your spirituality. Sometimes it's tough. And this brings us into this Rudra, this Shiva sense. Sometimes we have to be this howling Tao inside the atmosphere. You know, both of the Bhadrapadas relate to Rudra in a way, is relating to this sense of consecrating in the atmosphere, the realm where things can, it's the realm where good and evil occur, is through the atmosphere. And Shiva, this need to burn ourselves up in this universal fire in order to dissuade ourselves from the attachment to that existence, is very important. See you, Shwanetta. Very nice to see you. Thanks for coming and hanging out. It's always nice to be doing this with people. So let's start digging into, again, you know, there's a real tantra when it comes to the Rudra side of spirituality, which is, again, what allows you to burn yourself up in sacrifice and to continually bring all of your items onto the altar, your best ghee, your money, your sexual energy, all the things that are the most tantalizing. These are the things that Purva Bhadrapada, the one-footed serpent, brings to the altar in order to burn it in the universal fire of creation and dissuade the unnecessary soul attachments, the hungry ghosts that can't let go their teeth on the forms of the material. Because the material is fine. It's our soul's attachment to form that causes us to use and abuse and act evil in the material world. So there's an inner karma that is deeply running through both the Bhadrapadas, and they can be tough people as a result. Now, let's dig into Ajasya Ekapada, our first word in the sutra. Because, of course, that's what this book is all about. It's the Nakshatra Sutras of the Taittiriya Brahmana that we've already read. Vic Dicara is going to take us through each word and give us a little bit of a deeper sense of what it means. And so Ajasya Ekapada is the first word in the sutra. Aja indicates something that has not... so there's the A, and then usually when you have an A in front of something, it's like abnormal. When you have an A in front of someone, it is in front of a word. It means to negate that thing. So Aja is the negation of Ja, and Ja means something created. So Aja is something that has not been created, which means it's something that eternally exists. And this refers to Brahman, to consciousness, the supreme divinity. Brahman, the eternal, ever-living essence of consciousness, is not created nor destroyed. It's something that always is. Ah, okay. So Epstein then has Uttara Bhadrapada moon. That's probably what I was thinking then. Very good. So he would play, and that kind of makes sense, really, because he's dealing with the more water consecration side. I think that a Purva Bhadrapada person would not allow themselves to go through what Epstein did. But again, anybody can have any nakshatra and still be a monster, right? The nakshatra is just the soul of the monster, that's all. But thank you, Lux Occultum, for letting us know that particular skinny. So Brahman, consciousness, is the supreme divinity, and it is Aja, it is uncreated. Now, Ekapada means one, Eka, foot, Pada, just like Bhadrapada is the 4 feet of a stool. So Ekapada means 1 foot, Pada is foot. One-footed is a term that refers to snakes. So the phrase Ajasya Ekapada means the divine Aja, serpent, Ekapada. The divine serpent refers to Rudra's avatara as Anaga, to Ananta Shesha, the endless remainder. There's a lot of depth to that statement. Now, one consistently described the materially manifest world as a fourth of the totality of divine creation. Wow, that's really psychedelic. It's like it's the material manifest world is just the earth. Then there's the water, then there's the air, and then there's the fire. Or, earth, water, fire, air, depending on how you want to convey the 4 classical elements. But it's the 4 classical elements. Ajasya Ekapada is dealing with the material, and it is the essence of us that does deal with that material from the deeper spiritual perspectives. Very interesting. So one-footed Ekapada can refer to the divine serpent, but it can also refer to 1/4 of creation, which is the material quarter. Now, to say Purve Prastapada, Prastapada is the older name of Bhadrapada. Prastapada means the legs of a table. Right, so this is, by the way, this is our second word in our Nakshatra Sutra, just so everyone is clear on where we are here, right? Ajasyaika Pahadaha, Purve Prastapahadaha. So now we're talking about Purve Prastapadaha, the before Prastapadaha. So there is mentions of feet twice in the beginning. There's the Ekapada, which is one-footed, but then this is Purve Prastapada. Prastapada is the older name of Bhadrapada. Prastapada means the legs of a table, especially the legs of an altar. The Prastapada or Bhadrapada Nakshatra pair share 4 primary stars arranged in a square, like the legs of a table. So that's why Purva Bhadrapada, let's put it here, Purva Bhadrapada is the 2 legs at the earlier part. Uttara Bhadrapada is the 2 legs on the later part of the 4-legged table. The word Purve, of course, means in the first position, or in other words, in front. It's the nakshatra that comes first. This directs our attention to what lies in front of the sacrificial altar, Prastapada. What lies before the altar? That would be, of course, the tangible materials that will be sacrificed. And in some ways, Vic Dicara sort of winks here. The tangible materials are the ajasya ekapada that will be sacrificed. Yeah, interesting. I mean, ultimately, even whatever material we have is still us. We're burning up parts of ourselves in order to be in the divine grace of the universal fire. So this nakshatra is about the material. It's about the thing being burned. It's about the piling of useless unessentials in front of the altar and burning them, destroying them, altering them, refining them, recreating them, and ultimately releasing them, releasing ourselves from them. Now, that is the 2 necessary words in the beginning. What's our next word in our sutra? Is Vaishvanaram. So Vaishvanaram is what we're now looking at here. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. Vaishvanara. This word literally indicates the substance held universally in common, Vishva, by all living creatures, Anara. It's a substance held universally in common by all living creatures, Vaishvanara. And what is that? What do all creatures have in common? Again, the word we read here is consciousness, which is Ajja, the uncreated fundamental substance of existence. It's something we all share. Anara could also be read as Anala. L and R are phonetic neighbors. We see this quite a bit in all things Sanskrit, as for example, Ashlesha and Ashresha. L and R are phonetically like neighbors, so sometimes in some traditions they're interchangeable. So Anara could also read as Anala. And Anala, specifically, it refers to fire. There's a connection of Anala to fire. Excuse me. Vishvanala refers to a fire that is ever present everywhere. Fire symbolizes the soul, because fire is the source of inner light, which is analogous to perception. Excuse me. It's an analogous to perception and consciousness. Fire is the source of inner light, which correlates with perception and consciousness. Ah, I see what you mean. So the fire that is everywhere is Brahman. So it's really the need for Brahman that this nakshatra has. It's worth saying another meaning of universal fire is the breath of the cosmic dragon. Ajjaikapada is a dragon who breathes fire, Anala, to consume the entire universe, Vishva, during periods of cosmic destruction. So this is the serpent of Rudra that comes to destroy things when things need to be destroyed. But there is a relation to that with consciousness. There's a lot of psychedelic depth here, you know. We can't come into the fire of divine consciousness unless we have something to burn, unless we have karma to burn. How are you going to, what's the 3 things fire needs? Spark, oxygen, and fuel. The spark is spirit, the oxygen is air, it's karma, it's the way the world works, but we need the 3rd thing, which is fuel, which is karma, which is our past lives, which is everything that we're doing. So we need karma in order to exist, and it's the Bhadrapadas that consecrate them to make them pure and energized in the light of consciousness, in the light of self-knowledge, in the light of the bliss of reality, because reality can't exist without consciousness. Very, very cool stuff happening there. But what we can see here is that the divine one-footed snake who burns things at the altar and purifies reality needs Vaishvanara. It needs this fire, it needs consciousness, it needs Brahman, it needs spirituality in a lot of ways. And this is in order to produce Vaishvavasava. And this is a diminishing enthusiasm for the material world by deducing the ultimate purpose and conclusion of life. And that's Brahman. That's the deeper unity, that's the truth of consciousness, of self, beyond the soul's hang-ups on things that are not ultimately true, useful, and beautiful. So, Vaishvavasava. The root word sava indicates things that are vivified, brought to life, brought into meaning. That's sava. So that's Vaishvavasava. Now, we're adding the prefix ava, which is downward, turning it into avasava. It says a double meaning. So number one is to decrease life in enthusiasm and vitality. Yes. And two, to arrive at a sum or conclusion, a bottom line regarding that thing, a truth of that thing, the real truth of that thing. So you need to kind of let go of the excitement and agitation and compulsion, really, which again is born in our soul. Our soul's compulsion towards this thing skews the nature and reality of what that thing truly is. So, Vaishvavasava means diminishing enthusiasm for the material world by deducing the ultimate purpose and conclusion of this life. Oftentimes through the material, through the karma, through the pain of going through this consecration of Brahman, of God, the inner light, in a world that has no sympathy for it. This is the karma of Purva Bhadrapada, or Purva Bhadrapada moon, or a native with any emphasis of the Purva Bhadrapada. The one-footed serpent at the foot of the altar needs the inner light of consciousness in order to produce a diminishing enthusiasm, in order to diminish its enthusiasm for the material world. So the summary, the summary we get from this Nakshatra Sutra is that material things, which are ajasya ekapada, should be piled before an altar of sacrifice. That's prastapada. Burning these things by deep and thorough perception. And that's Vaishvanara. It's the thing that's needed. Really, this Nakshatra Sutra needs perception. Thorough and deep and all-consuming perception. Through consciousness, through meditation. These are the realization of reality. And that's Vaishvanara. This will allow us to comprehend the true meaning and purpose of life and all of these things we've piled on the altar. And thus we'll become disinterested in the differentiated, tangential material world. That is Vaishvavasava. 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 Yep. Beautiful. Now, let's get a little bit into the interpretation here. What can be expected from the interpretation given by this totality that we see here? This nakshatra is not satisfied or satiated by external things, but it has the ability to find their deep inner essence and significance to everybody. There's a universal significance to everything. And the material world is full of insignificant things that are not universally true, useful, and beautiful. These people are looking to burn all that, to burn the chaff in order to find the germ of what is truth to themselves, but also to universal humanity. When it functions well, this signifies an ability to discover scientific wonders and spiritual revelations through careful analysis of the physical world, thus granting purpose to conventional existence. So conventional existence will have its purpose, its meaning, and its place when we find ourselves taking advantage of our inner capacities for consciousness and intelligence, love, and all the things that relate to Brahman, to Ajasya Ekapada, to divinity. So this is the overall nature of this nakshatra. It's thick and it's deep, it's very spiritual, very esoteric. Now, how we would interpret planets falling into this nakshatra. We see that introspective and intelligent planets, like Jupiter, Mercury, Moon, Venus, and Ketu, can help to bring out this potential, each in their own particular way. Which is nice. You know, the moon, for all, you know, these are all very soft, intelligent, and introspective planets. They're going to do well with the Ugra nature, generally speaking, unless there's other afflictions, because we know this is an Ugra nakshatra. These soft planets can get yucky if they're involved with any kind of infliction in the chart, affliction. But generally speaking, Jupiter, Mercury, Moon, Venus, and even Ketu are introspective and intelligent enough to make good use out of this nakshatra. Now, when it functions, Purva Bhadrapada indicates excessive and destructive anger as a result of not finding peace and satisfaction in the pursuit of wealth and conventional success. So this is especially if you have more practical and externally oriented planets. This is Saturn, Mars, Sun, and probably especially Rahu can bring this out in their own way. I should say that's me saying especially. Vic doesn't actually say it. So maybe I'll just stick to what Vic says. Saturn, Mars, Sun, and Rahu bring this difficulty out. So not finding peace and satisfaction in the pursuit of wealth and conventional success. This is a very welcome nakshatra when we need to detach from external dependencies. But it's an unwelcome nakshatra for peaceful satisfaction with simple pleasures. Bearing this in mind, the relationship planets, Venus, Mercury, and Moon, do have a bit of a hard time in this context, although this nakshatra does confer positive spiritual potential with those planets. There might be difficulties in relationships. The Ugra nature, the Dhaatu nature might have a very hard, crusty time in seeing the other person's point of view, and in getting, you know, they might even treat the other person as part of this, you know, I'm looking to throw you on the altar and burn you along with myself so that we can both get to the bigger thing that transcends the two of us, which is, you know, there's a lot of beauty and truth to that. But, you know, this would probably happen especially with men with Purva Bhadrapada moon, is they can have this intense energy. But, you know, men and women who get into this with the moon or Venus or Mercury in Purva Bhadrapada need to still recognize that, again, we can't have fire without fuel. We can't have light without karma. We can't have a relationship without the other person. And so all relationships, all material contracts, everything requires the peace and understanding that all things are ultimately sacred, and if they're just made more sacred by consecrating them. And so relationships must be remembered to be a little bit compulsive and agitated with Venus, Mercury, and the Moon falling into this nakshatra. Wonderful. Now I want to read a little bit about our life lesson before we dig into Rahu and Ketu in this sign. But this has been our interpretations of planets here. We now know that Ketu does okay, Rahu's a little tougher. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we do, let's get into the overarching life lessons that can be expected from this Nakshatra Sutra. The overarching life lesson this sutra teaches is the unexpected connection between frustrated anger and joyful peace. The desire to accumulate material things inevitably leads to anger and frustration. That's Vaishvanara, this fire. This anger is like a fire, which is very dangerous. It causes pain, and it can be prone to violence. But if we can see the source of the fire, the dragon's mouth itself, Ajjaikapada, we will realize that the pain and suffering we experience in this material realm is rooted in our desire for these unnecessary external things. It's rooted in our attachment to those things. This will inspire us to burn out those attachments and the things themselves, thus extinguishing Vaishvavasava, our desire for them, and inspiring, which is also Vaishvavasava, inspiring us to define deeper meaning in the inner essence of these objects, what they truly mean and what they truly mean to us. And this will bring us deeper fascination, joy, and peace. An interesting point here is that tangible material things, ekapada, are products of consciousness, nada, that fire, that Brahman. They are external manifestations of the individuality and variety inherent in consciousness. When we realize this, we naturally seize avasava, seeking tangible things in their own context, and begin seeking the manifesting conscious entity at the root of them all, which is ourselves, which is our soul. Beautiful. Beautiful, deep, wonderful to read. There's a lot here. And so we can say that Purva Bhadrapada, like its neighbor, like its partner, the Uttara variety, there is a consecration happening here, but this nakshatra does it through fire, through burning things up and finding deeper meaning in the material things that come to us and that move through us and that we move through, because they're a part of us. But if we get lost in the details, we lose track of their essence. And that's what this nakshatra is trying to bring us into a realization of. Wonderful. Oh. Oh, it's such a brain jog reading this stuff, but it's so good for my brain. Now we have one more thing to read here, but let us now next come into the next part of this video. This is a part that I like to do, and I've been stretching myself to do it, and so now we're going to do it. Next, we've just read from Vic Dicara's Nakshatra, The Authentic Heart of Vedic Astrology. Now I want to spend a little bit of time discussing what it might be like to have the nodes moving through this particular nakshatra. It looks like my stream might have bugged out at some point. Yeah, that's okay. We're an hour and a half in. So we're an hour and a half in. Let's see what we can do with this. Let's now dig into what it's like when Ketu or Rahu are falling into Purva Bhadrapada. Of course, it's always necessary to see both the position of the one node and its opposite place to really know what's happening, what's being developed, what's moving through the narrative of the nodes in the nakshatras. And it's important to know what the nodes themselves are all about. You know, it's interesting. I'm not surprised to find that Vic Dicara mentions Ketu having some good potential quality and alignment with the nature of Purva Bhadrapada. Ketu is the graha of liberation, of moksha, of letting go of it all, of finding the essence. So many of the things that we ascribe to Purva Bhadrapada, we can relate to Ketu. Rahu is ultimately interested in the same thing, but Rahu here is going to be a little different, a little tricky, depending on whether Ketu is in Purva Phalguni or Uttara Phalguni. For these nakshatras, I don't know if you'd be able to see this, but see Purva Bhadrapada is opposite Purva Phalguni and Uttara Phalguni, which means if you have either of the nodes, Ketu or Rahu, in Purva Bhadrapada, the other node is going to be in either Purva Phalguni or Uttara Phalguni, which means that there will always be a contest, a frustration between these two, between the material world and an enjoyable conventional marriage life conveyed by the Phalgunis versus the spiritual, deep, fiery Rudra essence of burning myself up and everything I own in order to come into pure consciousness. And that is Purva Bhadrapada. Monica, it's okay, Monica. My Ketu is in the sign. My Ketu is in tropical Cancer. It is in the nakshatra of Punarvasu. Either that or Ardra. It's a little cuspy, but I think it's Punarvasu. And my north node is in Purva Ashada. Now, for Purva Bhadrapada, we know there's going to be this, it's bound to be involved with the Phalgunis, with the opposite node being in one of the Phalgunis. So this is bound to be the narrative that we're dealing with. With Ketu, you are developing the spirituality of Purva Bhadrapada. If you have Ketu in Purva Bhadrapada, like as in this video, Ketu here means that you need to liberate yourself into spirituality. So let's begin first by talking, well, I'll say this first. If you got Ketu in Purva Bhadrapada, around age 36, you're going to start reaching into Rahu in the Phalgunis. And it's at that point that you're going to embrace some conventional reality, some material. You know, again, Ketu wants to just burn everything. But once you burn all your sticks, then there's no fire. In fact, if you actually have a fire, having a fire is good for anybody with Purva Bhadrapada, because you're going to learn a lot about how to burn karma. What you do is you get the little sticks, and you pile the medium sticks on top of them. You know, little kindling, little bits, right? You light those on fire with a spark, paper, whatever. Gets the little sticks going. Little sticks generate enough heat to hopefully catch one of the medium sticks. Then once the medium stick is starting to get on fire, it's going to hold more energy, more heat. Then you can start piling bigger sticks on top so that the heat from all the lower sticks that you keep putting in more and more lower sticks, eventually the heat burns up the big, thick, chonky ones that you put on the top, that you make in like an A-frame or whatever, so that the big ones on top eventually catch fire as well. And that's when you've got the same amount of fire, but you're burning way more karma. And Phalgunis are going to teach you that you can't just burn all the small stuff right away and then have nothing for the bigger karma. The Falgunis are a bigger karma. When you get married, when you have kids, when you live a conventional human life, you follow the ashram of the householder, you're going to have a fat sack of karma, of attachments, of dreams, of things you wanted to do, of expectations and ideas of how reality ought to be, of how your children ought to be, of how your wife or husband ought to be. And all of these things are grist for the mill. It's our best ghee, our best material, our deepest attachments come from when we open our heart to what fate has in store for us in this material world. So Ketu is going to emphasize up to age 36. Ketu is going to be resonating with just having fire and not attaching ourselves to anything. But then eventually at age 36 and into your 40s, the North Node is going to probably push you to go towards the Falgunis, to embrace material life. So that by the time you get to age 48 and into your 50s, then your Ketu can mature. Then you can truly understand that your real life is all about the essence of Purva Bhadrapada, which is to help dismantle delusion in the world and bring people back to spirituality and the unitary consciousness. Ketu is going to bring that to be your main thing. But you have to go through the Falgunis with Rahu there in order to appreciate what the altar of sacrifice truly means in Bhadrapada. Right? That's pretty much a great way to convey that. You know, when we talk about Rahu, we're going to talk about the opposite. So for now, let's stick with Ketu. That's where we are. That's where we're headed. Ketu in Purva Bhadrapada. As we have seen by Ernst Wilhelm, we've learned that introspective and intelligent grahas are going to function well and bring out the potential, the positive potentials. Hello there, victory over evils. What a perfect person to have at our Purva Bhadrapada discussion today. We are doing our best to have victory over the evils in this particular discussion. Now, when Purva Bhadrapada functions well, we see the signification. There's an ability to discover scientific and spiritual revelations through careful analysis of the physical world. And this gives purpose to conventional existence. It makes us see that human life, with all its hang-ups, has the capacity to be divine in its own way, as long as we are willing in the end to throw all our attachments onto the altar, onto the fire. Where are these Falgunis? Here we go. Now, let's talk about if we've got Ketu in Purva Bhadrapada. That means the North Node is going to be in either Purva Falguni or Uttara Falguni. And both are pretty different. Really, we can see that the North Node is all about, okay, so Purva Falguni is ruled by Aryaman. And so it's sort of the male Falguni. It's the initiator that goes out and wants to do things in a masculine way. Masculine simply means initiating. It's the one who's outgoing, right? Just like male genitals go out and instigates things, whereas the female genitals receive, they're magnetic. They pull the universe to them. When you have Ketu here in Purva Bhadrapada, the North Node is in Purva Falguni. And this is the masculine side of the Falgunis. There's going to be a need to accept how masculinity as a gender, as a way of relating to people, is a part of your life. And there might be because of the spirituality of Purva Bhadrapada, there might even be an agender and asexuality with Ketu in the Purva Bhadrapada. But you might come to realize, especially with the fire nature, that a man's fire in a relationship is an important thing to orient oneself towards. Now, you could be, again, this male psyche you can actually find in both genders. Even a lesbian woman can still get a lot out of the relationship spirituality involved in this interaction with the nodes. Ultimately, by archetype, there's an agenderness and asexuality in this position of Ketu, and they need to embrace what masculinity means in relationships, what masculinity means for the woman and for the man. And, you know, you could be a man and you're dealing with your side of the relationship. I'm not man enough, you know, I'm not good enough to bring the things that I'm supposed to because I'm so Purva Bhadrapada. I'm too busy spiritually burning up everything. You know, you need to allow the Tantra to be here and to bring out the attachment energy, you know, the full intention. If you're a man and you're making love to a woman and you're just thinking about, I'm going to be done with this and then I'm going to go and I'm going to do my spirituality by myself in my corner, and then the life is really going to happen. So meanwhile, you're here trying to have, you know, intercourse with your wife or trying to go on a date or have a conversation with your wife. And in the back of your mind, it's like, oh, this is just more karma for me to burn. And the wife is like, are you paying attention? Are you here right now? Are you in this conversation? Is there something more important you should be doing? You want to go and sit on your little stool there? Do you want to go and sit on your altar and just pray to God, you know, and then just never deal with this problem that we're having? You know, these are the things that the North Node, like, come on, I thought you were a man. That's what the wife will be pushing a man with the North Node in Purva Phalguni. A woman with the North Node in Purva Phalguni would be similarly, you know, she'd be interacting with the male psyche inside herself and also prompting the man, you know, making sure that she attracts the masculine energy through the man that she's with or the partner that she's with. That there's an initiation in the relationship, that there is a romance, there is a devotion, there is an outgoingness that's based on the Rishabha, which is the bull, which is the male archetype. Both genders need to find the Rishabha, the male archetype of the instigating go-getter, somewhere in the flow of the relationship. And the North Node person with the North Node in Purva Phalguni will have a tricky time doing that because of the spiritual life that they've lived up to that 36-year-old 40s age. And ultimately, Rahu can tend towards very bold, creative, and romantic attitudes and behaviors. Ketu is the one that ultimately leans towards asexuality. So with Rahu here in Purva Phalguni, there will be an exacerbation of sexuality, of like, look, I need to be a man, and this is what men do, right? I heard all about men from my culture, and so this is it. And then it almost becomes like a cartoon. Too much dramatic display and flourish is required. And a woman with the North Node in Purva Phalguni might experience the same thing in her husband because of the way she's bringing it out of him or her partner. The asexuality is more of a Ketu thing. It's Ketu that tends to experience asexuality whenever it's placed in something that brings out, you know, really, Ketu and Purva Bhadrapada, we could say that there's an asexuality there, but the Rahu is going to enrich it and bring a very deeply lived sexuality there. The person is really going to see and understand what the male sexuality means with the Rahu in Purva Phalguni. Because Rahu in the Phalgunis is going to bring a rich experience of gender dynamic in the psyche. Ketu in Purva Bhadrapada cares more about the soul, which is beyond gender. But this person with Ketu here can easily bring gender into their lives. Ketu in Purva Phalguni would be more like having trouble probably throughout their whole lives with the gender dynamic. I know it can get confusing, but this is just the way it is. So right now, we've talked a lot about Ketu and Purva Falguni. Damn it, fuck. So much to... What I meant to say is that we've talked about Ketu in Purva Bhadrapada with Rahu in Purva Falguni. Now it's going to be very similar with Ketu in the same position and Rahu in Uttara Falguni. It's going to be similar. Uttara Falguni is kind of more like the feminine. The feminine is, again, attractive and magnetic. So here, the Ketu and Purva Bhadrapada person is pushy, is they want to burn things up. They want to get to the essence of life and spirit and consciousness. They want to really deeply get themselves by introspective thinking, by meditation, by spiritual practices. They want to penetrate through their idea of reality in order to embrace reality for what it truly is. And ultimately, there will be a burning, of a masculine burning that comes from this. And really, there will probably be a lack of what we call bhagga. And bhagga is the enjoyment that comes from inspiration and fulfillment of desires. Bhagga, as we know it, is the enjoyer of things. So when the North Node is in the nakshatra ruled by bhagga, we can see, again, that's more of this, even more of this material reality. Bhagga is the feminine dimension of enjoying a relationship and its karma, and using that enjoyment to make things easier, to make things more joyful, because God is not opposed to joy. Joy is the ultimate thing that all of the Vedas are getting at. It's the joy of truth and the truth of joy. And relationships are one of the arenas where we humans have the karma to move through the various complicated dimensions of what that joy means in exchange for what it requires. So Ketu in Purva Bhadrapada, when the North Node is in Uttara Falguni, there is a need to enter the Tantra even more than Purva Falguni. With Uttara Falguni, it's a Falguni. There is a need to enter the Tantra of relationships, and particularly to recognize when our imbalance of Ketu, of getting away from the world, is actually in itself a lack of truth, a non-truth, a misalignment. Reality is perfectly what it's supposed to be, and we have attachments and hang-ups that make us expect reality to be a certain way. Now, the whole enterprise of Purva Bhadrapada is to get past that expectation, so you can receive reality for what it is. It's like the Buddhist mirror. The silver mirror of reality is perfect, but there's dirt and grime on the mirror, so the Buddhists are always shining the mirror. That's a very Purva Bhadrapada thing. Now, when you have Ketu in the place where your main obsession is wiping this mirror clean, sometimes you have to stop wiping the mirror and then look in it and enjoy it and enjoy what you see. The Purva Bhadrapada is always cleaning the mirror, but never actually looking in it. And what else is this mirror for but to look inside it and to enjoy and appreciate the joy and bliss of reality and life that is right in front of us. So Purva Bhadrapada with Ketu here can get overly wrapped up in that. And so their challenge, the trick, is to involve themselves. You know, humans have cycles of desires that they are going to experience, and a huge part of one of them is material enjoyments of being in a relationship and enjoying the Shakti of that relationship, the energy that moves and flows through it, not being attached to it, but also not evading it. Because those are the two forms of karma, attachment and aversion. In this case, the Ketu person is perhaps averse, especially for the first 36 years of their lives. They're averse to the Falguni, the goods, the fruits. And this makes them actually ignore vital parts of their vital forces that is making the universe actually bogged down and slow down and, not spiritual. Because spirituality contains a holistic harmony and resonance with all dimensions of consciousness and matter. So the Ketu and Purva Falguni Ketu and Purva Bhadrapada person. When the North Node is in Uttara Falguni, there is a need to embrace the feminine side of receiving in a relationship. Especially women will find that they are the ones who are moving through the energy themselves. For men who have the North Node in Uttara Falguni, they will find that their partner, even if they're gay, their partner has a feminine psyche and they have a feminine psyche. Then they're both adding the feminine dimension. Everybody has the male and female psyche inside of them. The Rishabha and the Vahamana, basically. Yeah, more like the Vahatavaha. Everybody has the male and female dynamic. The bull and the receiver of the dowry from the wedding. And men will find that their partner, that how their partner interacts with their own feminine psyche, of their own receiving, of their own enjoyment and sustainment of the things that allows them. Again, we can't burn up the fire of consciousness if we don't have karma. And, bhakti and devotion and joy is like ghee. And that is the best purifying, cleanest burning fuel that you can possibly have. So the tantra of a person like this is to enjoy the fruits of the goodness of their feminine psyche, of their relationships, of their shakti, in order that they can have ghee, which burns the purest, in the spiritual work that they do as a Ketu Purva Bhadrapada person. There's a lot there, a lot being said, but this is probably the best way to say it all. And that has been Ketu in the sign of Purva Bhadrapada. I hope that you've enjoyed this, if you've been watching it. Now, let's do a quick flip here. We're going to do a little switchly-doo-dah. See, I do stuff like this so that when I'm editing my videos later, I'm like, okay, I'm doing a signal to myself, which means this is the next section. Now let's talk a little bit about Rahu in Purva Bhadrapada, which means that Ketu is over there in the Falgunis. And there will be a similar, it should be understood that there's a similar connotation here. Thankfully, the Falgunis are very similar to each other. And they mean a certain something. So in order to understand what's really going on with Ketu in one of the Falgunis, we need to understand what Rahu and Ketu are all about. So this is the example in this situation where the Ketu is in the Falgunis. Kind of the tougher position. The Falgunis are a very embodied material nakshatra, and that is a valid dimension of human experience. And God does not cast its shadow on any part of its kingdom. The Falgunis are the material tantra, the shakti, the enjoyment of energies between myself and my partner, the real lived experience on the nerves of the joys that reflect who we are. Because remember, with Purva Bhadrapada, we are reducing our attachments to our ideas of how reality is. One of the greatest ways to do that is to involve ourselves with the data. And the data is what we get as our material reflection of our soul. Because our partnerships, our house, our food that we eat, our security, our money that we have, the things we get from a marriage, these are all reflections of ourselves. And those things, the reflection in the mirror is not evil. Your thoughts about the reflection in the mirror are what fucks things up. So in the same way, our material living, our lover, our relationship, is a reflection of ourselves. And with Ketu and the Falgunis, you are likely you've got a lot of this crass karma, this relationship karma, perhaps, the gender of, am I doing my dharma as a man? Am I providing the value that I have as a woman? Whatever Falguni Ketu is in, it's going to bring these out, and it's going to challenge and exacerbate and bring out the fire of Purva Bhadrapada. So that, again, how this is going to work is that the person is ultimately going to have to make peace with the Falgunis. It's what Ketu ultimately does. Ketu matures later than Rahu. What happens is that we are unconsciously operating through Ketu, in this case in the Falgunis, one of the Falgunis, up to the age of 36. Probably very involved with, if it's Purva Falguni, it's the male archetypes of the psyche, of being a man, of being a Rishabha, the bull, and showing up and saying, I'm a man and I can bring home the bacon and I can protect, I can bring money to support the family, all classic masculine stuff whose genitals go outward. If Ketu is in Uttara Falguni, then it's more about the feminine archetype of using her joy in management of time and energy and enjoyment and personal values to, guide the man towards what's going to bring our family the greatest happiness. And for the man to find that himself through his partner, depending if you're a man or you're a woman. If you've got Ketu and Uttara Falguni, it's the inward flowing genitals. The Uttara Falguni is the receiving end of the joy, of the goodness, of the Shakti. It's very Shakti centered, Uttara Falguni. So whether you've got Ketu in one of those Falgunis, the north node in the Purva Bhadrapada is going to indicate that up to age 36, you're going to be very much in that material realm, but there will be something spiritual scratching at your third eye, blah, 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 just bothering you, that you can't fully enjoy the material world. You can't. You never will. Nobody ever will. None of us ever will. But especially with this nodal axis, the Ketu in the Falguni's person is going to be so indentured in the material world without a glimmer of the essential precedent and meaning of it all. The truth of the material world, what it's for, what it's actually doing, is Ajay Ekapat. It's the one-footed serpent. It is the Vaivashavam, the letting go of the attachments of the material world while still having them. Having an altar, having things to burn on that altar. You need to have an altar, you need to have a spiritual life, something that brings you into sacrifice and devotion, something deeper than your attachments. Then number two, you need to have your attachments, which the Ketu and the Falguni's person is going to find themselves beset with, and having much of that already. That's a good way. That's Monica. You're paying attention. God bless you. This is somebody who wants to be 1 foot, to be one. There's the material, and the spiritual, and they're all one thing. Now, with Ketu and the Falgunis, this is a person who's going to have 2 feet. One in the material world, one in the spiritual. And especially the foot is going to be leaning on the material, up to age 36. Then at age 36, Saturn matures, your Navamsha comes to the fore, and you start inching into Rahu at this point. At age 36, this happens for everybody. And then at age 43, Rahu matures, which means you're really going to develop a deep sense of spirituality, of what you've been missing by being so wrapped up in the materialism of man, woman, marriage, family, etc. in the Falgunis. You'll get a sense of the spiritual deeper essence through fire. Rahu in Purva Bhadrapada is a tough position. Well, we say it's a sort of a trial by fire energy going on here. And we hear that when Purva Bhadrapada functions, malfunctions, there's destructive anger as a result of not finding peace and satisfaction in the pursuit of wealth and conventional success. And again, Saturn, Mars, Sun, and Rahu bring this out of Purva Bhadrapada. So Rahu wants to, It wants to. Rahu is a material success thing. That's its thing. We launch deeply into Rahu. Rahu can be the greatest instigator of success, material success, power, wealth, fame, fortune. Rahu is meant to do these things to bring it almost in excess. So then we can begin to appreciate of the simple things that we have in the realm of Ketu. So this is somebody who is going to find dissatisfaction, who's going to try to live a happy married life, and they're not going to have enough. They're never going to feel like they have enough. It's only when they realize that the not having enough is the doorway to sacrifice. That is the fire. That is Brahman. That is the Brahman, which is the essential source of all things, which is the fire of divine consciousness. It's when you're happy being unhappy. It's when you're happy being unsatisfied. And seeing the wink of a living divine intelligence pushing you to burn up your attachment to how you think things are supposed to be. That is going to bring a fire. It's going to bring a destructive feeling, an anger, a feeling like the world is not giving me enough, my partner's not giving enough, I'm not enough, especially. And the Ketu in the Falgunis is going to instigate, again, an asexuality, a feeling that I can't let the basic energies of my Shakti in the place I'm living and the people around me, I can't manage that properly at all, and I never will. The spirituality is going to allow you to have a fire and a destructiveness that just burns you up, which you might have to pacify somehow, depending on the tropical zodiac lord that Rahu rules, the things going on with Rahu, the angry elements in the chart, Mars, but more particularly Saturn is really going to help you develop into new habits of spiritual comprehension and have the discipline to practice yoga, to practice meditation, to practice devotional things where you could be doing anything today on a Sunday, but instead you've decided to have a small pilgrimage by yourself. You've got the wife taking care of the kids, or the husband, let's use a woman for this case. You've told the husband, honey, I'm going on a tiny little walk, spiritual walk by myself. Okay, sure, honey, do what you got to do. It's a Sunday. You could be doing anything. You could be filing your taxes. But instead, you're going for a quiet walk in the forest to walk and to exercise the discipline needed to have a single-pointed focus on this moment and no other moment. To be present with nothing but this. And with all your pain, with all the agitation, this is good enough. And Saturn will allow you to have the money, to have the time to make those committed changes, to come into this spirituality so that you can eventually fall back into Ketu in the Falgunis and to actually be happy with your material life because you've developed a spiritual life within it that allows you to keep the fire burning so you can keep sacrificing. But ultimately at that point, Ketu in the Falgunis, the moksha comes from being happy with what you have in your material life. Bringing spirituality into it, but seeing it as non-dual. There's a real Zen wink happening with this particular position, right? Okay, let's see. We're 2 hours in. It's been a long one today, folks. As I like it to be. This has been our Rahu and Ketu for Purva Bhadrapada. It was good exercise for me, good for my brain. And it's nice to talk about Brahman. I have a lot of appreciation and respect for Purva Bhadrapada, for both Bhadrapadas, for bringing us all into this realization of what life is really all about and what it's all for. That's correct, Monica. There is no good or bad, but thinking makes it so, as Shakespeare once said. So this has been Nakshatra, the authentic heart of Vedic astrology. Let's take one last quick little supplication. These are these dope little prayers that come from the Taittiriya Brahmana. Vic Dicara has included them in his book. We read, when Aja Ekapad rises in the east, all creatures rejoice. And this is Aja Ekapad, the foot of the cot arising on the eastern horizon, which is the rising sign. So when this is the rising sign of the moment, the divine spirit in everything and everyone awakens. Prastapada comprehends and protects immortality. Fierce and fiery resplendent, climbing into the space between sky and earth, everyone everywhere follows Aja Ekapada and Prastapada. Thank you, Vic Dicara, for always bringing it down to what it truly is. Now, this next section, I expect it to be long and industrious. You know, it's worth us noting that, you know, this is something I always give here. The final word is that Rudra, you know, Aja Ekapad and Ahir Budniya, which are both the deities of the Bhadrapadas, are considered to be amongst the Rudras, along with Ardra, Mula, and Ashlesha Nakshatras. Rudras are the, you know, if we know from the great Gayatri mantra, Om Bhur Bhuva Svaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yonath Prachodayat. The Om Bhur Bhuva Svaha. Bhur is of the earth. Bhuva is the atmosphere, the Rudras. So Bhur is the tattvas, the elements, the vasus. Then the Bhur is the atmosphere in between earth and sky. And then, sorry, there's Pur, Bhuva is the atmosphere between earth and sky. And then Swaha is the heavens, the devas, the spirituality. So the Rudras can be rather rude. They can be in between things. They're very willing to deal with what they got to deal with. They're in the realm of good and bad. So one person says, I've got to do this for the good, and the other person says this, you're actually doing something bad here, and they can both get into all sorts of frustrating things. This is Rudra, the atmospheric guys. Guys and gals. So let's take a peek now at what can be expected from a native who is born specifically in the sign of Purva Bhadrapada. Now, in the book that we're going to read, this person groups the Bhadrapadas together, which is a little bit annoying. We can see why it would make sense. Now, there's a section specifically on each one. So let's dig into it. This next reading, it's going to come from the divine forces of the Lunar Nakshatras as portrayed in the Vedas. This is an author who goes by the name of Radhe. And she's a wonderful, well-researched author. I often say the only thing about this author is that she is a sidereal practitioner. And so there are times when she'll say something, and it seems her train of logic is that she's connecting this nakshatra to the symbolism of the sidereal sign that it was once connected to 2,000 years ago. For example, I think that these fall, Purva Bhadrapada falls mostly into the sign of Aquarius, and then a little sidereal Aquarius, and then a little bit into the beginning of sidereal Pisces. And so there's a connection there in a lot of the ideas of this nakshatra. That's that distortion that I've been talking about. So let's keep in mind that this distortion does happen in this text, but I'm going to do my best to speak to it when I sense it. Otherwise, this artist, this author, takes the ideas from the Vedas and applies them to the character of the deity that rules a nakshatra. It's very good stuff for our knowledge. So without further ado, this is the divine forces of the lunar nakshatras with the page that has fallen off because I read this book so much. Let's dig into it. As with other Rudra nakshatras, like Ardra, Ashlesha, and Mula, the two Bhadrapadas are extreme volatile forces. Rudra and his children, the Rudras. Rudra is Shiva, by the way, the destroyer. Rudra and his children, the Rudras, are intimately associated with the dark, stormy bowels of the turbulent midspace. Battles between forces of light, Vidya, and darkness, Avidya, occur in this aerial realm. As sharp, penetrating forces of light, the Rudras pierce through the darkness of this illusionary world, revealing inner truths. Man, I've got these little hairs. My hair is long right now. Oh, gosh, it's driving me nuts. It's these little guys. Yeah, none of that. Well, it is what it is. The Rudras pierce through the darkness of the illusionary world, revealing inner truths. As he seeks a ray of light in a world filled with darkness, the native of either of these serpentine-infested, Rudra-ruled Bhadrapada Nakshatras, they experience turbulent and sudden transformations in their lives. The experience of these extreme scenarios creates the potential for an extraordinary life. Now, I should have mentioned this in the beginning. If you have the moon in Purva Bhadrapada, that is the most relevant to this reading. The moon is the thing that creates the nakshatras. They're lunar mansions. But having your rising sign here can also deeply play a part with it, as well as the Atmakarika or any important signification of planets, as well as the south node here, can also be worth a read. But mainly the moon and the rising sign would be second. The primary difference between the Bhadrapadas is largely their Rashi orientation. So this is again the distortion here. The author suggests that Purva Bhadrapada has some Aquarian thunderbolt energy, whereas Uttara Bhadrapada is more about Pisces and the watery consecration. The watery consecration is a thing, but they connect it to Pisces, which is not regarded as correct in the tropical Vedic system. Now, Purva Bhadrapada gives harsh, unexpected experiences that might disrupt the flow of life. There's a symbolism of a machan, a platform in a tree used for hunting animals, related to this nakshatra, as well as a bed, no doubt a funeral cot, adding themes of death and the afterlife to this theme. So Paisley Peacock, if you have the moon in Purva Bhadrapada, then you should feel some resonance with what we're reading. This is the native of the Purva Bhadrapada, and the moon feels these things the most especially. This is probably a deep part of your soul. I'd love to know what you think. We're talking about how that there is a Rudra nature to the Purva Bhadrapada, to the Bhadrapadas. Rudra is like Shiva, it's destructive, it's fixing things, but also destroying things that don't work. So, as they realize the transitory nature of embodied life, the Purva Bhadrapada native searches for deeper meanings. In their quest for answers, they break through to higher forms of consciousness. The abstract and intellectual orientation gives this nakshatra a tendency to embroil the native in a persistent, even desperate search for theological understanding of the soul's mission on earth. Such questioning often can be the stimulus for this person's withdrawal from the world. And this is a person who likes to go into the cavern, into the home, into a place to meditate and find the answers within them. Because they know, as the old Taoist saying goes, without looking out my door, I can know all things on earth. The farther one travels, the less one knows. It is said that our boy Ramakrishna Paramahamsa is, of course, a Purva Bhadrapada moon, according to Astro Databank and to this author. I'd like to see if that's true in Ernst Wilhelm's system as well, but I could see this totally making sense. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa is an example of a deeply spiritual path that this Bhadrapada can invoke in the native. He opted for a life dedicated to spiritual devotion. He entered into prolonged and profound states of bhakti that removed him from the turmoil of the outside world. I love Ramakrishna. He will make me cry if I talk about him enough, to be honest with you. And there's so many beautiful things with Ramakrishna, where he has these visions. He just has these visions of that puts him in a state of samadhi, where he will see something beautiful and he'll just shake and he'll just drop to the floor. There's a story of him eating popcorn. He's a Purva Bhadrapada moon. He's eating not popcorn, but some kind of rice candy thing in a very, very old village. Just very plain rice popcorn thing. He's walking around and eating it, and he looks up, and just in a moment, it makes me want to cry. In this one moment, a bunch of black, what are they called? Storks, or not storks, but condor things, like these birds. And then white swans. There's a bunch of black condors here and a bunch of white swans, and they just both happened to come up at the same time. They decided to go this way, and then they decided to go this way. So the black and the white merged together. And he was like 8 years old, and he just dropped to the ground and started, people thought he was having a seizure. But what was happening is that he was having a spontaneous, kundalini awakening, but more of like a spontaneous samadhi. And so it's this moment of just being completely gripped by that universal fire of Brahman through the imagery of the black and the white coming together through those birds. I lost my place in my book, so I gotta find it again. 216. Ramakrishna is it, man. But this is this nature of Purva Bhadrapada, someone who can literally dissociate and be yanked out through seeing some kind of spiritual vision in the world. Now, with this serpentine energy of Purva Bhadrapada, the native endures intense spiritual purification, burning through past and current life karma, hoping for a one-way ticket to heaven. These purification practices are often tantric in orientation, as the fierce Ekapad Bhairava is a tantric murti of Aja Ekapad. So that's like a murti, a version, a manifestation of this energy. So these tantric purification practices can often involve a sort of kundalini awakening, is seeing these intrinsic and inherent divine powers coiled within the belly of the root chakra, and which also represent collective memories from this individual soul. If the nodes are involved, we can expect this person to be drawn to even more bizarre practices, whether it's Ketu or Rahu in Purva Bhadrapada. This person gets into more outlandish, the more outlandish, the more appealing to that person. These are people who can be like agoris, who will go and hang out at the burning ghats and cover themselves in the ashes of their dead relatives just to say, fuck it, fuck it, fuck it. It means nothing anyway. So the nodes in Purva Bhadrapada can bring that real experimental detachment practice. The native overall, under any scenario, has a knack for working with sharp and energetic forces. And they can like to change the realities of embodied life. There's a transformational fire that churns relentlessly towards improving the world. The pendulum of life easily swings to these extremes, whether it's, being within oneself or challenging themselves to jump out and do something novel for the sake of their spirituality, their pilgrimage. Now, if this person lacks a philosophical or spiritual construct that helps them make sense of the cruel conditions of life, if they are not good with Jupiter, they don't have a good 9th house, if they don't have a good 2nd house, which is like logic but also comforts of home, if they're lacking things that help them make sense of the cruel conditions of life, the world can appear random and meaningless. Jupiter and the 9th Lord are important for this native. So great internal dissatisfaction and dis-ease can develop. Instead of being a nonconformist who serves as a vital agent for change, this native turns to extreme activities as an outlet for their frustration and anger. They're unable to pierce through the darkness of the demon-filled abyss, and so they're overtaken by a sense of hopelessness. Interestingly, wow, yeah. It's interesting that there's a prototypical actor who has the destitute character of Purva Bhadrapada, and that is Robert De Niro. Many of De Niro's character roles, including Hannibal, as well as the guy in Taxi, are deeply disturbed souls. Drawn to the dark side of life, they are antagonistic and dangerous social misfits. Yeah, like, that's, like, bingo. I could totally read that in De Niro, which is very cool. Especially in Taxi is the one that really makes me think of a very, burning the world's karmas kind of energy. But we read that the tendency for Purva Bhadrapada to produce such extreme individuals is clearly the exception. More characteristic of this native is a tendency to perceive disparity between spiritual and worldly life. If they come to the point of balance, they can become a dancing, ecstatic yogi, a Nataraja, with one foot pointed to the heavens and the other firmly planted on earth. That's the Shiva thing with the foot, like, way up here with the other foot standing down. With a solid foundation, great achievements in the spiritual and material world are possible. And Purva Bhadrapada person experiences sudden flashes of insight like sharp flashing lightning that breaks the veils of ignorance asunder. They're able to envision the single-pointed light in the midst of chaotic darkness, and they gain an understanding of the mysterious working of the divine forces of life. And from here, the author then begins to talk about Uttara Bhadrapada. Cool. So that's one and then the other. Perfect. So that has been our reading on the Purva Bhadrapada native coming from the divine forces of the Lunar Nakshatras as portrayed in the Vedas by the author Radhe. I love her work, and I'm glad to be sharing it on my channel with you folks. This has been a long one today. My stomach is yelling at me. It's time to go eat some food. Wonder if you guys can hear that. Blah, 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 blah. But this has been good. I was fired up today. I love doing these readings because it's as I go through all this material, it freshens me up on the nakshatras. It's so deep. There's so much with these nakshatras. So stay tuned. Eventually I'm going to have a small video talking about this nakshatra as that you've just heard, the nakshatra native. As well, if you want to hear about the stories involved with this nakshatra, I'm going to have an extras video. I'm probably going to be able to link it somehow if you're watching this video after the fact, where I'm going to put out a video describing Aja Ekapa and what it means in the Vedas and what this nakshatra's deities as Rudras means in connection to the larger Vedic story. So keep your eyes out for that, folks. I'm Dustin Cormier. If you've been enjoying my work, feel free to subscribe to my email list. It's dustincormier.com/subscribe. As well, you can join me on my channel. We've already had somebody join today, actually. Somebody at the very beginning. I won't be able to find it. But I'm also happy to have subscribers of my YouTube channel, where if you join, you get a chance to see members-only material. Sometimes I'll put members-only material out there, and you'll get a chance to get free readings occasionally on my channel if you are a member. So either way, I'm here. I got lots of stuff coming through. I've had lots of people. Monica, nice to see you, my dear. Paisley Peacock, Enchanted Sea. It's been nice hanging out with you today. Oh, so Enchanted Sea, your daughter has Ardra Moon, and you have Purva Bhadrapada Moon. There is a connection because they're both Rudras. But how that's going to go, there might be some stormy dealings between you, but because you guys both might be able to deeply understand each other. Makes sense, mother and a daughter both have Rudra ruled moons. So definitely keep your eyes out when, as the mother, you would be the one who would save a mutual intense interaction. You would be the one, being the mother, to have the deeper spiritual authority to kind of pull back and to be, to not let the Rudra atmospheric anger energy get in the way between the two of you, to still teach your daughter, to guide her, and to be patient with her when she does probably what you do, which is to get mad and to have a big energy, right? That's just going from your nakshatra. There's so much more that can be read in each individual person's chart. If anybody's ever interested, feel free to email me for anything. I'm happy to discuss anything. And if you are interested in getting a reading from me, feel free to email me at astrology@dustincormier.com. For now, folks, it's been a slice. Thanks for everybody who's hung out with me throughout the whole reading. And keep your eyes peeled. There's always lots more coming out in the world of Dustin Cormier. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Monica. Nice seeing you. And for everybody, for all your support.